Right, I've been asked by my publishers who run this channel to keep a short I always go way over and dribble on and go way past my point and forget what I'm talking about, so I'm going to try and keep this very simple. Many of you will have came across the name Paul Venis this year. Obviously, he came to the public spotlight. I mean, he was a world champion years ago and he had that bit of fame, but I know predominantly the most of you will know him as the guy who's playing Lee Duffy. He was offered the part to play Lee in the Sayers film, which is going to be next year, I imagine, or what, you know, whenever COVID's buggered off. But yeah, that's, you know, people know Paul Venis. He's going to be playing alongside Gary Fairby, who's the actor who'll be playing Viv Graham. But who is Paul Venis? What was he about? I've just finished one of the first book of two, and it was very difficult for me. The first book was a very South Bank story, which is about a little boy growing up in South Bank, hearing these kind of mythical folklore stories. If you think of like Robin Hood in Nottingham, you know, but obviously growing up in South Bank, hearing these tales of it certainly wasn't a tall story. The Lee Duffy story was very much not non-fiction, shall we say. And Paul grew up, but to go back from the start, who was he? Right, he was a little fat kid, ginger kid, wall-eyed, a bully's dream, and he was kind of brutalised in a way, very much like Lee Duffy, to the point where, you know, his parents, I mean, it's in the book, I'm not going to, you know, but it got to the point where it was that bad. It was like where one of his parents was like trying to put stuff in his bags to go to school to defend himself. He was just, the first start of his life, although he was ravaged with love and warmth from great parents, he was bullied. And, you know, did it shape his future? I don't know. Most of the characters I've done books on, they've always been bullied and they become a product of their own environment. But Paul had that absolute bad start to life when, you know, when he got to like 14, 15, he wasn't this little fat soft kid anymore. He was this big, athletic, young, powerful man. And to cut a long story short, it almost mirror images Lee Duffy's start of the life. And he went after a lot of the bullies, got a name, got the reputation with it, did a lot of bad things with the drugs, alcohol. I'm trying to keep this short, so I'm going to just... Long story short, his life, you know, once upon a time, he was this young, athletic lad, and even played for Grimsby. He was on Hartlepool's book, so that he was like looking to become a footballer, but for whatever reason, which will be explained in his book, it didn't turn out. So Paul then chose a decade really, of drugs, alcohol, violence, chaos, mayhem, destruction, whatever you want to call it, taxing, all that kind of murky world. And basically had 10 years of, you know, putting his family and his partner through what kind of been very nice. But, you know, I mean, Paul's now been clean over 7.5 years, maybe even 8 years. And he kind of got clean. You know, the life he led was always going to lead to a lengthy custodial sentence. People trying to kill him, people tried to stab him. One story he told me about was someone ran him over, leaving some kind of party on the morning. Still to this day, he has no idea who it was. So he was kind of causing all kinds of problems for, you know, for everywhere he went. Basically, he got to this point where he was, you know, when you're in that world wrapped up, drug addicts are selfish, and you're wrapped up in your own greed and narcissism. And, you know, Paul would walk in the houses and say, right, give me, you know, 4 in the morning, just walk in dealers' houses. And, you know, as you get the picture. So he did end up getting his house peppered with bullets, prison sentence with it, and inside he sounds a bit of a cliche and quite cheesy, but he read a book, came across Shane Taylor, who was this kind of once upon a time demonic character. Paul had a few dealings with Shane, and you know, almost actually nearly fought. But when he was reading the book, this kind of evil, I love you, Shane, if you're watching, but this kind of bad guy who was so mean had been replaced with this warm guy who'd found God. So Paul Venis is reading this book thinking, that's not him. Anyway, reached out, written him a letter. He went to see him. Long story short, again, because I'm trying to keep on the clock and I keep getting told off my publishers. They met up. He found Jesus. They got married, lived happily ever after. Not joking. He did find Jesus though. And he turned his life around. And then, because Paul maybe was the only thing he could do was fight, was started doing licensed boxing, never lost one. The only person who ever did go the distance with him was Gary Fairby. Overall, I think Paul had something like 32 fights, 32 wins, 31 knockouts. And in that time, Paul, yeah, he tried his unlicensed boxing, but where he really flourished and became, you know, which was for him was the K1, MMA, kickboxing, whatever it is. And Paul became a North-East, a British, European world champion. Never lost, became somewhat of a legend in the K1 world. I don't know a great deal about it, but I've been reading the forums, and he's certainly, and I spoke to Alex Reed, and he was quite impressed with some of the stuff he did, you know, so, because there's a lot of belts in them games where some of them you can win playing snakes and ladders, but I think Paul, well, world champion, is, you know, they're closing the name. And I've got to know Paul quite well this year, where things have kind of even developed. He's almost give me a hug up, because I got a message about a month ago saying, blah, 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 won't mention the name, but he said, I was in Home House Prison when Paul was in, doing his, obviously, Her Majesty's pleasure, all in inclusive. He said, I remember that, lad. And he said, I watched one of your YouTube clips the other week with you, and I'm impressed. Would he come into prisons and do talks? So, obviously, the world's a bit of a strange place at the minute with COVID-19. We were going to do it on Zoom or some kind of internet. But he messaged me again, and he said, I spoke to a lot of the our inmates, and they said, everyone go read your books. Goes, would you come in? So anyway, long story short, again, they've basically asked us, will me and Paul go in on a regular basis now and start talking to the inmates? And yeah, and you know, so you've got literally from Paul being a little bullied kid, standing on his own feet, and you've heard that cliche of the bullied become the bullies. Paul becomes someone he wasn't, lived that life, the silly life, the whatever you want to call it. Got out, you know, a family stood by him, someone dragged him to the 12 steps. You know, got clean, got off all the drugs, got off all alcohol. Paul's actually given me a lot of advice on stuff as well. So it's not only, you know, I'm not only trying to do something for him, he's helping me. And I think the future's really bright for him. You know, he's been given this break because he looked a bit like Lee Duffy, could fight and was from South Bank. Where in actual fact, if you look a bit deeper into the whole Paul Venis story, if you like, you know, you've got everything. You've got the victim to becoming the bad guy. You know, should have been a footballer, lost his head for 10 years, was this big tough guy, and then went down to a ravaged drug addict where he would end up fighting with people. And the year before, where it would be a quick knockout, he was vulnerable. You know, he was addicted to crack cocaine and all this kind of stuff, and he was having 50-50s with fights that wouldn't have even looked at him sideways the year before. Got clean, come out, found God, become a world champion, and now he's given his testament in churches and all this kind of things, and Home House Prison have basically said, we remember him when he was at h's worst, you know. So if he can do it, anybody can turn their life around, and I think that's what Paul's story is about. It's not just the Lee Duffy. It's not just he could have a fight. It's about a guy who thought, right, I'm only going to end up, you know, because he did by his own admission, he grew up to be a Lee Duffy fanboy, as he said, and he grew up being blown away with these stories of, oh, that's the next Lee Duffy, that, and you know, and for all the things Paul's achieved in life, when he was in that silly mind of taxing drug dealers and knocking all these people out, and when people said, oh yeah, you remember me of the Duffer, that was like, when it shouldn't have even, it's almost, I remember reading Tony Adams' story, and he said, I've had all these caps played at World Cups and that, but when people used to say to him, Tony, you can drink pints of Guinness like people can drink lager, and I think, oh yeah, I'm the man, me, like, and you know, he's been really, really open, and what you get about with Paul Venis is really open and honest, and he's humble and humane. He's just one of the lads. He's led that bad life, and he's probably, you know, you've seen them all doing, Paul Bryan's doing life sentences, Lee Duffy's are gone, many other people I could name, and it only ends up in misery, that life, that people, you know, I defy anyone. I've got 18 books, and I always try to get a message across. Yes, they're interesting, you know, but it's not the way to go. It's not, do something else. And Paul found his vocation in life, if you want, by becoming a world champion. Now he's sorted his act. He's been sorted his act out far longer than me. And but you know what? Now he's got his own business. He's on the doorstep of becoming an actor. He's got some huge podcasts in the new year, which we've arranged. They're all set for. Books, he's going to feature in documentaries, and then the sky's the limit for him, and you know, and everything that he's going to be involved in now is going to be full of positivity, going to prisons, going to schools, going to youth clubs. He's fully CRB checked. If anyone wants to, you know, get him around your youth club or whatever, or, you know, because I've been in, start of this year, I was in a Naughty Boys place in Peterlee, and last year Thornaby, and it's a shame, but the facts of the matter is that if probation officers or police officers could speak all day, and a lot of the kids are just like, yeah. And when there's someone of that kind of magnitude, that maybe when you're young and you're silly and you think it's cool to live that life, and, you know, and for someone like Paul Venis to stand there in front of you and say, it's a load of shit, get yourselves an education, then that's when it's powerful and thought-provoking. As I always say about Lee Duffy, imagine the message he could have done if he'd have still been here. It would have, people like me would have been nowhere near him, because he'd have been fighting filmmakers off for millions, you know. But yeah, that's just basically Paul Venis. Yes, you know him as, if people know him as the bad guy, the world champion, you know, he's going to play Lee Duffy, but he was the bullied victim. He was then the bad guy. He was then rehabilitated, and has now come out the other end, where he's now only involving himself in positive things, you know, and credit to him. And yeah, that's just, you're going to see a lot more Paul Venis in 2021. Documentaries, films, hopefully. He's got the part of Lee, and then you never know where that's going to lead for him. I always say to Paul, listen, you'll be on IMDb, and when they need some kind of rough-looking northern accent man, who better, you know? So he's got to be open to it. And there's, you know, one thing about Paul I've noticed is there's not really many people that dislike him, if you know him, kind of thing. But no, he's gonna be someone that you're gonna get to know in the next year. Podcast in the morning, actually. I can't say where, but there is going to be some big, if you can think of the biggest out there, then Paul's going to be doing that. And then, who knows? And another thing is, he's actually opened his, he's just in the process of training people, you know, so I in my head, I can see Paul Venis kind of kicking Middlesbrough into shape. And, you know, because there's been some unbelievable sports athletes from Teesside, but I can't really, you know, when you think of John Pearce was an absolute, one of my idols, and yeah, Peter Richardson's, and your Jonathan Woodgate's played for Real Madrid, but how many kind of really truly world-class athletes as the area had? I can't really think of many. And although it's not a massive household name, K1 or kickboxing or MMA, sorry Paul, whatever you did, I have Googled you and I've read all your forums, and you were this absolute knockout machine, and you competed at the highest level. And you know, a few people said maybe you retired a bit early, but I know your body's ravaged with injuries and you're becoming old and all that. But no, maybe God's got a different plan, because another thing is, you might not actually understand it when you watch him, but Paul starts the day on his knees talking to God, and he'll always finish the day talking to God. And yeah, he's, you know, as Paul's best friend, Shane is living proof. You know, as I explained, people know that them two become close. Shane almost changed Paul's life, as vice versa. But yeah, it's divine intervention, is it? I think so, describe it. And yeah, Paul, I think, you know, he's got a really bright. I really hope he's got a really bright future. But I'm there for doing the books. I know Fat Cat Productions are going to be making a YouTube film on him. He's going to be in my Too Far Too Soon. If you hears it out and you see him walking about in South Bank with the shorts and Shadowbox, it's almost like you're looking at Lee Duffy, certainly when he sat in the commercial. But whatever the future holds for Paul, I think there's a message there as well of, you know, I mean, Middlesbrough 2015 or 2016 was, I mean, it was a 17, it was anyway, pound for pound, the worst place in Britain to live for knife crime. So if he can go out there and say, right, this is, you know, it's not clever, then it's a massive, massive message to the youth. And I've noticed more and more people are starting to follow Paul's story as well. The mayor of Middlesbrough's following him. Yeah, there's, you know, some actors, some footballers, even that girl who sang Tocca's Miracle started following him on Twitter this morning. And yeah, he's it's all a positive. There's no silly or I'm hard and, you know, that silly kind of nonsense, knocking people out in 10 pages. He's a guy who lived a very, very foolish life, but there's also a story behind it. I didn't just wake up one morning. He didn't wake up and say, right, I'm going to be the next Lee Duffy and become this kind of fighting manatee side, if you like. He was bullied, and, you know, and that's, you know, it's just, this is just, I mean, my publisher's going to kill me because he said 10 minutes and I've gone 17.5 again, but this is just to wrap up a few things on Paul Venis. And 2021, no doubt, is going to be a huge year for Paul. If you want to buy his book, it's out. You can pre-order it now via Kindle for £4.95. It's called A Very South Bank Story. Paperback's going to be out in February, and yeah, you're definitely going to see more of Benner. I think I was whatever, Paul. Yeah, lovely big teddy bear character, and it's nice to see the local lads changing their lives and actually making something. And I think he's got such a massive opportunities in front of him, you know, and it's only up to him if he takes him. But yeah, thank you so much for following the channel, guys. If anyone wants to get in contact with Paul Venis, he has a page on Facebook called Paul Venis -actor. Paul answers all the messages. So anyone to get in contact with him. He was on the radio this week as well. So yeah, he's going to be very, very busy in 2021. Right, thank you so much for your time, and I hope I haven't bored you too much. God bless.